Better put the word out. Get ready for the nerd out. Better put specs on. Better break necks on.
Greetings, true believers, and welcome to episode 1 of the Polis Podcast Collector's Edition, a bi-weekly show about comics, pop culture, and faith. My name is Chris. With me, as always, is Hector, and we're just super excited to be starting this new piece of Season 2 in the Polis Podcast. Our interviews are going to come now a little more frequently, and they're going to come as our Collector's Edition specials, because every comic needs to have the word special, Collector's Edition, and number 1 on every single one of those things. But we're excited to have our first set of guests, and we're going to just jump straight into things. We have the one and only Matt Kindt and Jay Cormier from Off the Page Games. Jay and I were talking about that we share that yay sound at the end of our names. So that's the only way.
But I'm not the one and only. Matt's the one and only. I'm just
You're
one
just
of
Jay.
The many Jays.
So one of the things that we're really excited about talking about today is normally we talk about comics, but a lot of folks in our community love tabletop games. Well, good news, kids. We're going to talk about the intersection of both over the next 30, 40 minutes. So we're just really excited to be able to have you guys. So welcome, Matt. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you.
And yeah, so as we get started, Matt, some of our readers are going, and our listeners are going to recognize your name.
That's a special skill to read a podcast.
I know, and I don't think I have it, but Matt has done a ton of different things throughout the comic book industry. Matt is not only a gifted writer, he's also an amazing artist, and a lot of work he does both sides of things. So Matt, for folks that might not know who you are, what's your pitch for, hi, I'm Matt?
Geez. All right. Yeah.
Everything all at once.
No, I've been doing comic books for 20 years. So I write and I draw, and sometimes I just write. And I've just been doing comics almost my whole life. So books like Mind Management. I wrote some Justice League for DC. I wrote Spider-Man for Marvel. I did some other books. Most of my books, though, 90% of my stuff is like independent stuff, like through Dark Horse, Department H, Mind Management, and trying to think about Folklords, which is out now from Boom. But yeah, mostly creator-owned books with some like Marvel and DC stuff sprinkled in here and there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because I know for myself personally, I got introduced to your work through Valiant. As a retailer, I really fell in love with Valiant. It's really easy to fall in love with Valiant because Dinesh at the time just loves his product and his universe and his creators so. And then Adam and all the rest of the guys that handled us on the retail side just made us fall even more in love with the product. So I know that's where I first got introduced to you. And that's why I think it's exciting that kind of off that same van, you have new stuff coming from the same group of folks, but under a different name that Dinesh has formed, Bad Idea. And we've talked about Bad Idea on the podcast here a few times, and their first book is going to be one of your properties, correct?
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't mention Valiant, but I probably wrote more for Valiant than anybody.
Right.
100 issues worth of stuff like Ninjak and Exo Man of War. And, but yeah, I always feel like to me, that was sort of like a weird gap or a bridge between creator owned and work for hire, where I felt like it was creator owned, even though, it was company owned. And then when Dinesh sort of got bought out, I love working with Dinesh, and then Warren, Simon's my editor there. We just like really bonded. Like there's a few people in the industry that you work with, and it becomes more than just like a working relationship. Like you just get each other, and then this trust builds up, and you just have fun making comics together and so that was kind of what happened there. Is like Dinesh wanted to start Bad Idea and invited me to be a part of it, from getting on the ground floor and sort of help launch it. And I was definitely all in on it. And it's great because it's sort of creator owned, but we have the mind of Dinesh and everybody all the guys I've loved working with at Valiant, they're all behind it and sort of trying to just better the comic book industry, you know, like put good books out and try to get them to everybody and make people excited about reading comics.
Yeah, and I know also as part of the bad idea concept, we've explained on a previous episode that new distribution model of kind of cutting Diamond out and going direct distributor is going to be one of the things that a lot of folks look to. But we're going to include it in the show notes that today, while we're recording this, was actually the announcement day of the first 50 comic book stores nationally that are going to come alongside the bad idea and carry your book when it first comes out. So I know Hector and I and a lot of other folks are really rooting for you guys and hoping that whole thing comes together, because I know creator owned, or at least that feel, like you said, is something that usually benefits the reader in the end, because a lot of your pure idea hits the page, and that's just really neat. So we're definitely rooting for you there as things go.
On a side note, today when I was seeing those posts, though, I completely forgot that Bad Idea was, you know, the initial launch thing for this. And I just saw local comic book shops holding up signs that said Bad Idea. And I'm like, well, that's not good advertising. I'm just
right. All in, baby.
Well, what's interesting about that, though, too, like to sort of turn it, bend it into the games is, I didn't know anything about the board game industry. I grew up with comics and I know comics, and I worked with all the publishers. And so it was interesting when I started getting into board games and talking to Jay and just and sort of picking his brain. I was like, well, how does this work? And I just I was so happy that to see there was more than one distributor for board games.
Right.
I was like, wow, I remember when there were 2 comic book distributors, you know, and so I think that's the thing I was impressed with board games was how healthy the industry seemed, you know, and then how much more improvement we need to do with comics.
well, nobody thrives in a monopoly except the people with a monopoly. So
Yeah.
Oh no. So I think that's a great point to bring Jay kind of into this conversation. And so Jay, on the other end of the spectrum,
Hello.
What brings you into this glorious union of comics and tabletop games? So kind of tell us your origin story, if you will, and a little bit of off the page games.
Sure. So my parents were murdered in the back of an alley. And
I don't think that can't be true. And if it is, oh my goodness.
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
that wasn't the funny part.
You know, I know. We've all heard this origin story many times. No, I'm a gamer, so and absolutely a comic book lover. I've got equal weight in my office here, full of comic books and board games. And I've been designing games for years. I've about over a dozen published games, most of them with my buddy Sanfeng Lim. And we just have designed everything from dexterity games like Junk Art, where you balance blocks on top of each other, big strategy games like Belfort and Akrotiri that are like very kind of deep, thinky games, and then party games like a Dungeons and Dragons game called Rock, Paper, Wizard, or But Wait, There's More. So a whole bunch of different games. And then we bumped into, well, I guess not bumped in, but kind of bumped into Matt at Gen Con about 4 years ago. It was through Brian and Colin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was palling around with Brian. I'd never been to a board game convention. I only played probably Catan, I think, a couple times, reluctantly.
And how many family members did you disown after that game? Just asking for a friend.
It was just my brother. He's so into games. I'm derailing your origin story a little bit, only because
no, that's fine.
This is where we connected. That was the first time I'd ever seen a board game convention, and I went home with literally a trunk full of games. I think I spent $1,000 on games that weekend. Anyway, go ahead, Dave. That's how we met.
Yeah, and so we kind of met and chatted about. At the time, we were also talking about Sixth Gun, possibly turning that into a game. And it was only through talking, and that didn't end up happening. But through talking about that, it was Brian and them said, "You should meet with Matt. He's here too." And I'm like, "Matt who?" And they're like, "Matt Kindt." I'm like, "What? Matt Kindt's here? Cool. Let's set up a meeting." And so we did. The next day we met and we chatted. And Mind Management, I think, was still like in the middle of the series. And I believe, or was it over then? 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
It was just done. Yeah, I think I just finished it.
Just finished, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. And we both kind of, I think you had played, or you're sometime in there, you had played our game Acriteria and enjoyed that game. And so we both said, like, let's do something together. Let's do mind management as a game. And we're all over the moon with like the opportunity of that. But that took us a long time to figure out a game to make it really not just hitting story points or characters or things that you would recognize from the comic, but the feeling was more the issue. And every time we came up with a game, it just wasn't feeling like you were in manipulating people's minds and really trying to outthink them. And it wasn't until we came up with this concept, if you're familiar with types of games, this is like a one versus many game, like a hidden movement game.
Hidden movement, sure.
Yeah, one player is moving around secretly and the others are trying to find. And it really is getting into the mind of the other person and trying to figure out what would they do. And then the mind management player is trying to maybe change what they think by how they do other things in the game. So it's perfect fit.
That's good stuff. So Jay, I'm going to start kind of on your end of the thing of, so why tabletop games? What as a creator made you go, this is the thing? And what kind of brought you into this world to ultimately, you found out about Matt being at Gen Con and seeking that type of thing, but why Off the Page? And, give us a little bit of how that company came to be and your heart kind of in that.
Yeah, I think with regards to board games in general, I'm a huge fan of board games, like over 300 I own as far as board games go. So I just love board games. And then eventually, Sen and I, we moved apart to different parts of the country in Canada. And so to stay in touch, we said, well, let's design games together. That'll be a way for us to kind of continue to stay in touch. And so that actually motivated us to work even more together than when we were in the same city together. And so that's how kind of that came about. But we were always designers, always pitching to publishers and getting picked up and signed by other publishers, and kind of said we would never be had interest in being a publisher. And it wasn't until we got with Mind Management, we actually got signed by a publisher and everything was kind of rosy. And then unfortunately that publisher went under. And so Matt, Sen, and I had a meeting and we're like, well, what do we do now? Like, do we have to kind of now repackage it up and kind of start pitching it again to other publishers? And then I think it was actually Matt who said, well, why don't we just do it ourselves? And that was kind of like the start of like, oh, really? Could we? Should we? And so Matt's like, yeah, and obviously he would do all the art. And he said he has a graphic design background, which is huge as well. I'm like, oh, this is good. And so I talked over with Sen, and Sen's got a full-time job, and I fortunately have been able to move down to a part-time job for the last few years to focus more on board game design. And so I do have a bit of time. So I thought, well, maybe if I ran the company. But then I was like, I want to be a company that kind of stands out and is recognizable for something. There's so many board game companies out nowadays that they don't really, I find, a lot of them don't really have an identity. And there's a few exceptions. Like there's a company called Restoration Games. Even, you know of it, and even from the name, you almost can kind of get what they do. They take old games and they redesign them to make them more palatable for a modern gamer and re-release them.
Like they were the ones that just did Fireball Island, right?
Fireball Island, Dark Tower,
Dark Tower,
yeah. And so I'm like, that's a great brand. So what could I be? And then when I thought about it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to be a publisher for board games that only publishes games based off of creator-owned comic books. And that might be niche, but I think
that's awesome, though.
I know. But I get to work with some of my favorite people that I've always looked up to as far as creators. I'm like, that's cool. And obviously starting with Matt is starting right off at the top of my list, which is awesome. So it's just gonna be downhill from here. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I'm the fall guy here, but
everything's gonna be great, and then as soon as you leave Matt, it's over. He's already set it up.
And then it was just a process of brainstorming for the name Off the Page, because off the comic book page and onto the table. And also it has another implication of, with board games, you want table presence, something that really pops. And so I think our games really jump off the page at you. Yeah,
no. And I think that's a great place to kind of transition into, we've talked about mind management. And you've alluded to the fact that that is the first property that we're going into here, and that is the first property you're going into. So I know you guys are kickstarting the project, which is pretty typical to market, but I want to talk about your decision to kickstart and also what that first week has. You're through your first week, right? A little over the first week.
No,
and
by tomorrow will be.
Yeah. And fully funded in the first 14 hours.
Yep.
And you're just crushing it as of right now. So you're in stretch goals and all that good stuff. But tell me about you guys. Let's talk about the game itself. The art is pretty epic, and it's because Matt, your brain is the one that gave us mind management in that style and everything. So it translated really great into a playboard. I just got to say, having seen the early pictures and everything.
Oh, Matt, tell them about the story of the game board.
Oh,
yes.
Man. I will say it was probably the hardest art project I've ever had in my life. It was just so. Is this the story you want me to tell, Jay?
Yes, absolutely. It's exactly.
And honestly, I was like, "Oh, this is going to be so fun!" Like I come from comics and everything, and then board games is such a different medium, like in every way. And I thought it would. I just was like going into it like, this is going to be so fun. I can't wait. I'm going to draw this big board, and the thing is with board games is it has to more than just like comics with storytelling, which I get that and understand it. With board games, it has to be so functional. Like it can't just look good. You have to be able to play it. It has to function. And so then that was like the biggest struggle was like, how do I want this map to look super cool and like a city from above and perspective. But then there's these little icons you have to have in there, things you see that you have to be able to just immediately pick up and look at the whole board and see them right away as part of the gameplay. And so then that ended up being really hard. I drew and redrew that board like so many times.
Yeah, you actually had a first draft of it that we ended up using at a few demos. Like I think at Gen Con we even used that first draft.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was just to jump in a little bit, all the stuff that Matt was providing art wise was like, I was over the moon. I'm like, oh my God, the cover's amazing. Oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. And then the board, I was like, oh, I don't love it. And I'm like, how do I tell Matt this? Like, he's the artist. Who am I to say like, hey, I don't like your art, sir. And
how dare you?
Yeah. And I was really trepidatious about having that conversation. And I think I got 2 or 3 sentences into it. And I think Matt kind of gleamed onto the fact that I was kind of like dancing around something. And he just came out and said, hey, I don't like it either. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. No, it's hard. Like, and it's funny is like, because it was the only part of the project that I hadn't really done before. Like I've never really had to design a thing that you had to interact with in a functional way, like packaging, I've done that. Book covers, I've done that. Storytelling, I've done that. But like the board is totally different. And what's funny is like when we first started talking about it, I don't like Jay and Sandman. They're the board game experts, So they were explaining all these things to me. And Jay, I remember you were explaining the magic circle. Do you remember that? Where you're like, I was like, what's the magic circle? And he's like, it's where everybody, it's the border in the center of the game where everybody agrees that it's almost like the reality of what you're doing happens within these borders. And that sometimes it's a board that you're playing on, but it's this artificial sort of perimeter that you put in the game where you decide to play within it. And I like that idea of like this sort of magic circle and everything happens within it. But within that magic circle, man, it's super tricky to sort of design it and draw. It can't just look good. Like if it just looked good, that's easy.
Yeah, we gave Matt a bunch of restrictions and constraints about the functionality, about it had to do this, you have to do this, and you had to do that. And so he complied with our restrictions, and then it made it look kind of yucky. But fortunately, he had an idea. He's like, I have one idea that I want to try, and I think it'll be the best of both worlds. And that's pretty much when the hard work started after that. The board that we have now is ridiculously gorgeous. It's like this huge Zanzibar cityscape, but all the icons that we need in the game just pop right off the page. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I know the first time I looked at it, I was like, that is Matt's art. And then I started looking at it again because I, as a comic book fan that got turned into a tabletop guy, I tend to look at art first. I guess that's just my thing. And I go, cool, that's Matt. It's definitely Matt. And then I look closer at the board. I was like, hold up. There, like you said, I can tell where the interaction is supposed to be from looking at the playmat in front of me. So I think whatever iteration you guys went back and forth on, it worked out well. And I'm looking forward to seeing it because full disclosure, I backed this project as soon as I saw it pop because I love the IP that's present here, and I am a sucker for hidden movement. I recently tabled Letters from Whitechapel, which is Jack the Ripper versus a bunch of detectives, and you basically are trying to move about Jack avoiding all the patrolmen in an actual London cityscape. And I fell in love with hidden movement because it's interesting to have a certain set of rules of how you can function in that circle and then have other people trying to decode you. Totally. So you get that defector feel from certain other games of one versus many, but also you have to try to figure out the logic to what I'm applying in front of us. So,
and how long did that game take you to play?
Well, that's the thing is I think the first time we played that game took like 3 or 4 hours.
So you could literally play Mind Management 4 times. That span of time.
That's
awesome.
Encouraging.
It's not even like a, some publishers put like, 60 to 75 minutes and then it's an hour and a half to 2 hours. Right. I've never seen a game go longer than an hour ever.
Most of my friendships don't last as long as the games I play. So
I like if Richard Ham from Rahdo runs through reviews, if you're familiar with him. He's a big influencer.
Yeah, I saw you guys had some playthroughs.
But
he went through your stuff.
Yeah, if you check out his final thoughts, he kind of summarizes it nicely about how he says with this game, because he said this is his favorite hidden movement game of all time, which is fantastic. So it's so amazing to hear that from him. But he says that this game has such velocity and every single turn you're learning something every single turn, and that just keeps compounding. And so the speed of the game is so great. So that's what I like.
No, I dig games that can get tabled and not take the entire day. There are games I want to do that, but it's nice to have those ones on your shelf that you can pull out at a party or even real quick and be like, you want to see something cool? It's going to take us 90 minutes.
Now, I know you guys are running the interview, but I want to run back and actually, because it's it's an art question that I want to get from Matt.
Yes.
So another thing that tied to the board was, and we're talking about these features that have to pop off them. Then the recruiter, the one player in the one versus many, he has to draw 3 of these random feature cards, and all it had to have on it was that feature. And in my prototype, that's literally all was on the card, was just that feature, and that's kind of guides the recruiter player to go after those and move around in a way to visit as many locations with those features as possible. And then, so I pretty much that's all I gave to Matt. I'm like, if you want to do something funky with it, go for it. And then Matt, why don't you walk us through? I don't know how you came up with this idea, but just it blows me up. It's my favorite part of everything in this game is those cards.
Yeah, I think part of it to me is you could like why does it look like it looks? Like if all you need is the information off of it, then honestly it could just be a black and white thing with like a triangle on it. Like that.
I know.
Strip every game down to the basics. But what I love about board games in general, and like specifically my favorite ones are it's not the ones where it's fun to play. It's the ones that it's fun to play and then it looks so cool. Like I like looking at the stuff, the art or the little pieces that come with it. Like that, there's 2 aspects of it. It's almost like when you're reading a comic book, if the story is great and the art's just okay, it's like, oh, okay, it's great, but when the art and the story both hit at the same time, like so well, those are my favorite comics, and it's the same thing with board games, or like my favorite ones are the ones where it's super fun to play and then it just looks really cool. So I feel like there are these cards, there's a lot of extra stuff in the game where it could have just been, we could repeat a thing or take one design element and I was like, man, but why? If we can, like we have, and this is what I was told Jay, I was like, Jay, we have unlimited art budget. Because we don't have any there's no budget here other than like it's gonna grind me into the ground when I'm
and it's gonna spoil me for any future project.
Yeah.
And I'm never doing another game after this one. So, but
the step tokens. Yeah. I think that's my favorite piece. Like, I want that on a hat and a t-shirt. Like, I just think like if you had a step token hat with it literally had the feet moving across a brain designed hat, that would be dope. Like, I'd be all over that.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, I'm glad because I really did want every single little piece in this game to have its own, have something for you to explore or look at. And a lot of times, this game's it doesn't take 2 hours, so it goes a little bit quicker. But a lot of games, you like if there's downtime in between or you just end up staring at the same thing over and over again. I wanted to do something with the art on this where you stare at it and then an hour into the game, you're like, oh, if I turn this upside down or if I put this card next to this other card, there's a little secret in it. So like this game is full of little things like that where it's not necessarily even part of the gameplay, but it's like a little design element that maybe you don't notice until you played it a couple times.
Yeah. So all of these feature cards, every single one is as if it was found on somebody's desk or floor from a piece of garbage of like
nice.
a coupon clipped out of a newspaper or an ad pinned on a bulletin board or a postcard from a travel destination. But then in each one is one of the feature that you need. And it's so clever and fun, and I'm just blown away by it.
It is. I mean, it literally looks like a bulletin board at like a coffee shop. Like if you put all the feature cards together, it looks like a bunch of different art or different like just aspects that literally don't tie together, but tie together beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was fun. I think the hardest part was to conceptually come up with, because the cards are all the same size. I couldn't change that. So like, how do you make them all different, but also make sense in the format, which is like a card size shape, for everyone, but also completely different. So there's a hotel key card. There's a punch card for the pool. There's all kinds of different things.
So good.
So I'm kind of curious, as this project rolls on, what for each of you, and I think we'll start with you, Matt, what was the most exciting part of getting this package together and then ultimately seeing that a fan base responded overwhelmingly well for how quickly you guys funded and how much you continue to gain? You talked a little bit about your process and the things that kind of overwhelmed you at first from comics to this medium, but what's been your favorite experience in this thus far?
I think it was actually seeing other people play the game for the first time, and I think part of it is, Jay, I don't know how you feel about it, but I was too close to the game and how it worked, because everybody kept asking me like I was working on the art and everything, and they're like, oh, how's the game? Is it fun? I was like, I don't know. Like we've seen every step of the process. Oh. I just don't know because you're so close to it. It's almost like when I'm making a book too, it's like, I think it's good. Like I'm doing it because I think it's good. I'm trying my best, but you don't know until it's done. And then even then it's like, you only you see it through the reflection of the people that are reading it. And then I felt like when we watched that game being played, where was that? Was it Gen Con last year? I think it was the first time I saw somebody playing it. And then seeing them have fun and they're laughing and then it's like tense. And then, and seeing that actually happen, I was like, it's great because it's like, that's somebody that they've never played it, they don't know. And I think it's good, but we've been working on it so long. You're just too close to it. So I think seeing other people play it for the first time and having that fun playing it, that was probably the coolest part, because it confirms that the game is good.
Right.
And then, and then it's cool that we made a thing that people are interacting with and like interacting with each other with. It's like a catalyst for people having fun with one another. And I think that was the coolest thing to me. And that's one of the things that struck me about board games, and this is what I like about board games is I've been going to comic book conventions for 20 years, and it's just different. You know, it's a different medium, and it's a different kind of person that collects and reads. But I think in general, like reading is a solitary activity. Like you'll read, and then you'll maybe talk about it with friends that read the same thing. But at the end of the day, it's you and the book, and you're by yourself taking it in and reading it. But what I was struck by at Gen Con is that everybody would be buying these games and people collect games, but then everybody just goes back to the hotel lobby, sets up games and plays. You're just playing with perfect strangers. Like I've never done that before. I was like, what? It was unbelievable to me to see board games and how they bring people together and strangers, and everyone's having fun and interacting, and like the being able to be a part of a product or whatever. I hate calling it a product because it sounds but,
right.
But being part of an art form that brings people together, where they're making, you're sort of the catalyst for the story that's being told and the way they interact, and them having fun. I think it was super exciting to be part of that. You know, it's what I love about board games.
So it's interesting. I kind of went through the same process that when I got introduced to tabletop games, I was like, tell me again why I want to spend hours doing these. And I'm a nerd. I'll admit it, but I enjoyed comics and everything. And Gen Con last year was actually my first Gen Con. And I had pretty much the exact same experience that I was like, I'm literally in community with all my other fellow nerdy folks, and we're just going to play every game under the sun, and they're all different, and they all have different IP attached, and you become fascinated by game mechanic. And so after being in comics as a collector for so long, I was like, I love tracing artists and seeing their influence in pages and in one another and the stories they tell, that I was like, oh, but these stories can also be interactive. That's amazing. And then, like you said, literally a room at a hotel will fill up for the show ended at 6, and we were in the Marriott at Gen Con in the ballroom till like 2-4 in the morning every night. On top of it, just in community with people we didn't know, playing 2 to 4 hour games at a pop. And it's one of the things that excites me most about this community. So I love that that's what a creator such as yourself has fallen in love with as well. Because it is pretty neat. That communal experience that we can share over a table and something neat. And now you're getting to experience a thing you've brought into the world. So I'm really excited for you. So
no, it's good. It's funny, especially coming from comics, you know, it's such a solitary medium in every way, like reading it and making it, you're just all day alone doing the thing, you know? And so the idea of like hanging out with strangers for like 4 or 5 hours I was like, what? No.
Hold on.
That sounds horrible, you know. But then that first Gen Con I went there, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. This is great. What a great medium. And then I was starting to become like I probably have 200 games now in our studio. But what I got addicted to was that the community that it gives you, but also it is the mechanics. It's like, oh, how does this game work? Now I want to learn how all the games work. And part of the fun isn't. Like I could care less if I win or lose a game ever, but what I care about is like learning the game. Like, how does it work? What do we do? Is there some new element here? And so that's what's exciting. That's why watching Jay and Sen put the game together, it was like, it's like how I think people feel like if you can't draw and you watch somebody draw, it looks like it's a miracle happening on the page. You know, it's like, but to me, it's like, yeah, I get it. I've been doing it for years. It's no big deal. But that's how I felt when I was watching Jay and Sen like put this together and then figure out all these elements and how do the mechanics work together, and then tweaking it and like constantly revising and making it better. It seemed like a miracle was happening, you know, while watching them put this thing together.
It's magic.
So right, and not the magic circle, just magic in general. So Jay, what was kind of this was just an amazing, what was your big moment in things so far in getting this game put together and getting it to Kickstarter and kind of just absorbing everything that's been going on over the months that led up to the last week.
Oh, in the last month or whatever. I think,
or just in general.
The big moment was actually literally that Ratto review. Prior to that, we had a review come in to me specifically, not a review, but a reviewer who had the copy, and he didn't like the game, and I was getting really worried, and I'm like, oh no, what? And so I'm going back and forth talking to this reviewer and trying to understand, and like he got one thing wrong, so I'm like, oh, he tried it again. He goes, no, he still didn't like it, and he's giving all these suggestions on how to change it. I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? And then I finally realized that they chose not to use the mental note tokens. And that was really confusing to me why. But they said, oh, we didn't think that was necessary. I'm like, oh, and I have since gone back to the rules and try to make that a bit more of a mandatory suggestion rather than just use them if you want to. So that was a bit my bad on the rules for sure. But that's how important these mental note tokens are. And to kind of clarify what this means for those listening is because it's a deduction game, you're going to ask questions about to the recruiter, and they're going to answer with either yes and give you a step token on a place where they've been, or sometimes they'll answer no. And sometimes in a deduction game, a no kind of sucks. You're like, oh, shoot. But in this game, a no gives you sometimes more information than a yes does, because if it's, say, turn 9 right now, and you ask, have you ever been to a Flux coffee shop? And they say, no, I have never been one. Okay, well, now there's 5 spots on the board, because every single feature is on the board 5 times. There's 5 spots on the board that the recruiter has never been to up until turn 9. So you use these little dry erase tokens, and you'd write something like 1 to 9 with an X, and you'd put them in all the spots with the Flux coffee shop, and boom, now you can start to see that he did go here, didn't go. It actually really gives you a lot of information, which is fantastic. So to answer your question, yeah, it is neat. The answer your question was, once we got that Ratto review where he was over the moon with it, I literally started tearing up. I'm like, oh my god, this is so great! I'm so relieved. Like, just like Matt says, like sometimes you're so close to it, you don't know, is this good? I can't remember if this is actually good.
Is this actually the thing?
Yeah.
Your Kickstarter is ongoing. How long is the Kickstarter running for?
Well, the new norm is kind of a 21-day thing, but there's a little bit of a leeway exception where if you're a first-time publisher like I am, the 30 days is okay. And so I went with the 30 days because of the amount of time I might need to kind of make sure my reach is out there and people have heard about the campaign and whatnot. But we've started off gangbusters, so yay.
Yeah, just looking at it, looks like you got 24 days left to go. Almost double your initial funding goal. So that means you guys are talking about stretch goals and all that kind of good stuff right now. So what are, for both of you, two of your stretch goals that you really hope happen?
Well, I think one of them just happened just last night, and it's so the game comes with these things called a shift system. It comes in the game. Mm-hmm. And if you're a gamer, if you've ever played like a legacy game, like Pandemic Legacy or Charterstone or any of these kind of games, they have these sealed packages in the game. And as you play, you open them up and you get more content. And so our game has we don't want to call it legacy, because legacy also implies that you're changing the game board or the state, or you're tearing things up or whatever.
Right. Which gives a bunch of gamers like an aneurysm at times. It took some time for people to get over the fact I'm supposed to destroy the thing?
Yeah, exactly. Nobody ever does that. Exactly. So ours, there's no destruction. Everything's reusable. But the idea, because it is a one versus many game, whoever loses a game, they get to open a package from their side. And that gives them a little boost for the next time they play. So that it's almost like a handicap in a way, where it's like, you're really good at playing the recruiter, we can never catch you. Well, here, have some more stuff, and now you can. And so the cool thing we just unlocked last night was another package. So the game came with 10, 5 for each side. Now we have 11. There's another package. We have the ability and tested content to go up to 14 of these packages total.
How about you, Matt? Is there a stretch goal that you really hope gets made?
Probably one that doesn't involve more art.
Right. I was going to say, or are you like, please stop. We funded the thing.
Not true. One of them is I want to do those extra, because those little packages, they all have little mini comics in them. So I get to do 20-page extra stories. So, I have no time to do them, but that's the thing I like doing most. So I would like to do more of those, just because
will those be kind of new mind management stories, or will you pull from the existing?
Yeah, no, it's all new. Like I don't
Yes.
repurpose anything. That's
Well,
just
it's the whole purpose of the comic actually is it gives context to what's in the package. It actually gives a story about why this is going to help you in your next game.
Yeah. There's the one I did, the distraction token thing. That story.
Hashtag spoilers.
One of my favorite.
Oh no.
Short stories. Like it explains the way
This is great.
the piece of the game work, but it's also one of my favorite little mind management shorts I've ever written. I just feel like there's a little bit more to it, that I liked. But yeah, so I'm honestly, the stories are just, I'm putting as much into those as I have any comic I've ever done. And it's cool because they have to sort of serve dual purpose. Like they fit the theme of like explaining what's in that box and how that part of the game works. But it also serves as its own kind of standalone story, which I like. But I also want to do the wooden tokens, the 2-sided wooden tokens. That's one of the stretch goals, isn't it? Where there's 2 sides.
And you see the back of their heads?
Yeah, and you see the back of their
head.
head.
A stretch goal. That's right. It's so cool that I'm like, I can't make this a stretch goal. It's got to be in the game because it's so cool.
Okay, well that's happening. What about those little wooden meeples? Is that a stretch goal?
That was a stretch goal. So there's these recruits, and the whole purpose of how the mind management player wins is they have to find 12 recruits hidden around the world based on these feature cards that they draw, and they just currently there's little meeples. Little people wooden things, and for those that aren't gamers, I have to explain what a meeple is. And so we just had a poll, and it's ending today actually, where they can vote on what the shape of this meeple could be. And I tasked Matt with that. I'm like, can you come up with a few designs that we could vote on and what these meeples could be? And I was literally thinking they'd all be just like a meeple, but like with a hat or with something in his hand.
No, these are going to be the most crazy meeples that ever made it into a game.
They really are. And I'm so blown away, and everyone's excited, and people are voting on them. It's great.
No, I'm looking forward to that because as soon as you pitched that for the poll, I was like, what is he talking about? And then I went back to the campaign. I looked at it and I was like, oh, yeah, that's different. That's going to be cool. Because we're all used to meeples. Once you've fallen in love with tabletop games, you're like, cool, meeple, got it. Give me cool meeples now. And there's some games out there that have done it, but yeah, those are going to be pretty unique. So wow, I'm really excited for what both of you are accomplishing here, and just the core concept of bringing comic book IP into the tabletop industry honestly has been one of those things since I fell in love with tabletop. I kept walking around conventions going, there's so many comics that would make really good games, but I have no idea how game make, because that's not me. My brain's comics. I understand comics and storytelling, but game mechanics is something I had to learn, which has been super fun and exciting. Is like Matt, I'm the guy that's like, show me what this game does. I have now Googled all the words. I understand what most of them mean, though I don't know if I'll ever know what Euro truly is. But so worker placement. Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry. One last, because I'm just kind of really proud of and happy about what we did on the campaign page, which is a bit different for a Kickstarter campaign. If you've ever backed a Kickstarter, is that we're doing 2 super engaging things. One is we're playing a game of mind management on Kickstarter right now. So I'm showing you the board state, and then people are talking in the comments about what they want to do for the next move. At a certain point of the day, the next comment with the move is going to be the move that's made, and then I do all the stuff in the background and update the board. So everyone's talking and kind of planning and guessing and all this stuff. So it's really cool and engaging. And the other thing we did was a secret mission where the Eraser, who's the big bad in mind management, there's images of her all over the internet with secret codes, and there's been a heavy group of people that have created a whole forum thread on Board Game Geek to discuss it and trying to figure out and they have found just, I think recently, a day ago, all the codes, and now they're trying to decipher what it means. They had to decode it. It's been awesome watching them stumble through all these codes and figure it all out. It's been crazy.
That reminds me, I need to upgrade my moves and take a look at where the game state currently is as I've been participating. So kind of the last question that we always kind of like to ask a lot of our creators here at the Pull List and across Love Thy Nerd in general, just as kind of a final thought, if you will, is why did you guys become creators? What motivates you to make a thing? So Jay, kind of give us your one-off. Why create? What excites you about getting up and making a thing?
I mean, it's altruistic, but at the same time selfish, because I have also a performer background, and I just always enjoyed making people laugh and getting and entertaining people and bringing some sort of joy to their lives. But I get a lot out of it because that applause or laughter was like heroin to me. I love it. And the same thing goes with board games, making board games. It's the same idea. Just I want to entertain people. I want to, and then selfishly, it's like I feel like I'm awesome when people like something that I did.
That's awesome. So I think we all can ultimately relate to part of that story, right?
The heroin?
We want people, well, not so much, but that we take enjoyment in the things that we produce, and we want people to find enjoyment. So Matt, you kind of have two categories to pull from, but what got you into comics and excited you as a creator, and then why tabletop has become kind of where you're at least for this moment?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one. There's no one thing that motivates me to do it, but I think when I was younger, I was just a reader. I was a consumer of the comics, So I'd read them and I'd be like, oh, what a great story that was told so well. Like Frank Miller's Daredevil, I grew up reading that, and then later it was like Dan Clowes on 8-Ball. He was doing such crazy stuff. I was like, I really like this art form. Like I like the story and storytelling, and then the drawing, and I like to draw and I like to write. And so it just seemed like a natural fit. And so I think, I don't think what gets me up every day with comics is it is kind of like the audience is there, but it's such a delayed reaction to it. Like by the time I'm done with the book, I'm on the next thing already. And when people are starting to read it or take it in and then talk about it. So that's not what motivates me, but I think
it's almost like nostalgia by the time it makes it back to you.
Yeah, I know. It's like I got to kind of remember, well, what was that book? What was I thinking when I did that? When I had to go back and sort of remember it. But so to me, that's important. It's important for me that people like the books, only that because it helps sustain my ability to keep doing more books. And then you get to a certain level, and it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And now honestly, to me, the thing that motivates me to keep making stuff is to try to do something that hasn't been done before, or do it in a different way that no one has thought of. And so in a way, it's almost like there's a weird competitive part of me that wants to do the thing different than anybody's done and in a totally different way. So there's that part of it. And then the other part is just like trying to tell a story that will just kind of inspire people to be better or treat other people better. That seems like such a big grand thing or whatever. And I think a lot of my stories they're dark, or they have sad elements to them. And I share a studio with Brian Hurt, and he was telling me the other day, he's like, people don't go read your books to feel good. I was like, oh, I don't think that's true. I think you're not reading them the right way. I think it does. There's elements that are sad or twists to them that are kind of dark, but I think the message in everything I've ever done is to just try to treat people, like golden rule stuff, just like other people.
So you want your comics to be like the Bill and Ted of
be excellent to one another.
Exactly. But Matt, yeah, board games, I'm not. I am out of my league when it comes to that. Working with Jay and Sam, I'm like, okay, this is there. I'm just visiting,
I know you said you're just visiting, but if there was another one of your comics that you could have a board game based on, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think Department Ace could be a good one, where there's like a time, like a ticking clock, where you have to get down there and solve a mystery and then get back out. I think maybe as an amateur, as a fan of board games, I could see that maybe translating somehow into something.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want a black badge.
Oh yeah,
universe.
What would you do for that one? I'm trying to think.
I have some. Part of me wants to do like a role playing game and write a role playing based universe book that you could function in that universe. But I think there's a lot of other options. But of recent terms, my last few that I really enjoyed from you was Black Badge and Grass Kings, because they both kind of had that mystery element, lots of things going on and lots of interesting characters going on. And both of those kind of speak RPG sort of to me, but
and we'll have to see where Bang goes, because it's just only one issue out so far. And who knows where that's going yet. Well, somebody knows on this call.
Here's the thing. My board game ideas, Jay, do you remember one of my early ideas from was like, when you guys, to your credit, you're like, okay, let's try it. You play tested this idea I had, and it was just the worst. Like it made people. Remember, it was like we tried to get people to do like a secret thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a cool idea, and it wasn't until playtesting that I realized, like, oh, that makes everyone not, because basically you wanted to try to, you had all these goals. If somebody could say, if you got somebody to say something that was written on your card, then, or do something, like even outside of the game, like which we thought was kind of mind management, like what's real and what's not, and like get somebody to get you a glass of water. And if you did, then you got a point or something like that. You got some resource or something.
Oh, okay.
Or get someone to say, ask you about the weather or something like that. Like all these weird things. But what it did, because everyone knew what theirs were, everyone just shut up and didn't want to contribute anything else. And so it was, it kind of bombed on that perspective. It was like, oh yeah, that's too bad. It's a cool idea though. I liked it.
Cool idea, except it doesn't work as a game. Like everything that's good about games, where you get people together and you're enjoying each other's company and tell it like it.
I might revisit it if I find a way to motivate people to talk. So that's what we didn't have. We didn't have something that motivated people to say things.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
the process of game design working itself out.
Here we go.
I know you guys got to get back to your respective worlds and everything, but Hector and I just really want to thank you both for taking a little bit of time to kind of step out and tell us a little bit about yourselves. Your main project going on in Kickstarter right now, Mind Management. We will link that in the show notes for everyone to go and check out. So if you're a fan of comics and you're a fan of tabletop, you need to also keep an eye out for Off the Page Games, because I'm hopeful that this is the beginning of something awesome, because my two favorite worlds are colliding. And
Me too.
I'm completely slightly selfish on that point. But Jay, thanks for spending some time with us. Matt, pleasure as always. We're looking forward to how Bang continues to go and your everything going on at Bad Idea. And I think it's great to see these two worlds colliding, and we're really excited for that. So I think as we close up for this first kind of episode of our interview specials, our normal show, we straight up talk about comics that came out this week and that kind of thing. So if you're ever interested, for way too long, because we're nerds and we read a ton of comics every week, which keeps our local comic shops in business, which is a good thing. I know one thing that we wanted to Hector just kind of reminded me offline, and it's a good thing, is as people are considering this Kickstarter, do they need to have read the comic? Jay, Matt, do they have to have a background in mind management? Obviously they should read it. It's a great book.
I think what's great about it, like even going back to that Ratto review, like he had no idea about the comic at all. And so he loved the game. That was our goal the entire time, is that we don't want just the mind management fans that like board games to play and buy this game, because that's going to be a smaller subset of people. Why not just get people who like games, especially if you like hidden movement games, and then also bring the mind management people in. And that hopefully is what we've done. And I think one person said it best, saying, oh, when they saw the game, they were excited, then learned there was comics. They're like, oh, there's comics? Oh, this is so great. So if I like the game, I can then go explore this world even more. This is so cool.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was thinking.
No, it's good. I think it's important for them to be independent, where they stand alone, and you can have one without the other. But yeah, if having both together just adds to it, adds another layer.
No, that's a great combination. And what our folks here at Love Thy Nerd can be on the lookout for, we will have in our hands in the not too distant future one of the copies that some of our other folks who are primarily tabletop folks that aren't as familiar with the comics, are going to be the ones that do a playthrough and put that up on the site. So we'll let you guys know when we post kind of our playthrough and celebration of what you guys have done here as well. So those listening today, if you're interested in it, check out the Kickstarter. If you still don't know, wait, hopefully over the next week or two, you'll see our playthrough from the rest of the gang here at Love Thy Nerd. Either Bubba or Matt are going to go through it. So it'll either be a Beard Bros or it'll be a co-optional coming from our network, but we're really excited because our friends over at Board Game Spotlight, the Funkhausers, are hooking us up with that copy so we can enjoy it and share our thoughts with you guys. So I think that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening. And thank you again, Jay and Matt, for spending an afternoon with us to talk about two of the things that all of us love ever so much. So thank you guys. It's been really great chatting with you guys, and good luck on the rest of your Kickstarter, 24 days.
Thank
you.
you.
We're looking forward to all those stretch goals being met and people being able to enjoy this game. You guys going to be kind of, to close this out, at any conventions that they might be able to get a glimpse at it over the summer?
Assuming they're not canceled like Emerald City Comic-Con was, which we were both going to be at. Yeah, exactly. That was literally today we were going to go to that, yeah. Yep. So no, but hopefully I'm going to be at Origins, and I think Matt and I are going to be at Gen Con, again, assuming they're not canceled.
Yep. Great.
Sure. I'll at least be even if they cancel it, I'll just go to the lobby and play games.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just follow Matt on Twitter. We'll give you that information as well, and he'll let you know where he as the recruiter is going over the summer, and you can meet him and play games.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna take all 7 continents, the game of Risk.